my visual aid. I will be passing this around. You good. So, today's speech will be about what we are currently doing, how we're in the military, and the diversity of our military. Since the beginning, since I started the United States Armed Forces, the ranks and titles have mostly been occupied predominantly by white people. Today, I'm going to show you how gradually over time, how the diversity and inclusion of our armed forces has changed, pulling statistics mainly from the Army and Navy, starting from the beginning in the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, to World War II and Vietnam, and then lastly to present day. Starting with the Revolutionary War, so Civil War period. First, we're going to hop into the Revolutionary War. In an article by Black Patriots in the American Revolution, it says, despite the generally accepted estimate that 5,000 black soldiers and seamen served the cause of independence, accurate numbers are hard to ascertain. The August 24, 1778 return of the Negro Army tells numbers of black soldiers in 15 brigades of General George Washington's main army. The result was 755 African Americans in a force totaling almost 21,000 rank and file corporals and private soldiers, plus drummers and fifers. Black soldiers comprised of 3.63% of the whole, almost 4%. And as you can see in that graph, starting in the Revolutionary War, you see that it starts off 4%. This study did not include indigenous forces that also fought for both sides, but those numbers are hard to estimate and come by. But we do know for sure that they did help to fight on both sides. So, American forces and British forces. During this time, our armed forces were composed of little people of color, but we did make a little jump in the next war, the Civil War, which was different because it was a call for independence when people of color were enslaved, so that jump was to be expected. In an article by the National Archives, it says, by the end of the Civil War, roughly 179,000 black men, 10% of the Union Army, served as soldiers in the U.S. Army, and another 19,000 served in the Navy. Nearly 40,000 black soldiers died over the course of the war, 30,000 from infection and disease. Now, with this statistic, it shows a significant jump as people of color were willing to fight with the Union for their independence and freedom. It went roughly from 5,000 serving during the Revolution to almost 180,000, while even showing some had decided to join the waterfront in the Navy, which is what we're representing. Going into World War II, gradually in between the time of the Civil War and World War II, a lot of things transpired, and the military started to let more people of color and even women in their armed services during World War II, which will help change the numbers drastically over time. In an article by U.S. Army Center of Military History, it says, Negroes were an important source of manpower for armed forces in World War II, as it is shown by the fact that a total of 1,056,841 Negro registrants were inducted into the armed forces through selective service as of December 31st, 1945. Of these, 885,945 went into the Army, 153,224 went into the Navy, 16,000 into the Marine Corps, and 1,600 into the Coast Guard. While also saying in this article, inductions into the Army of Selected Service registrants from other racial and nationality groups up to December 31st, 1945 included 13,000 Chinese, 20,000 Japanese, 1,320 Hawaiians, almost 20,000 American Indians, 11,506 Filipinos, and 51,438 Puerto Ricans, showcasing the diversity of our growing beloved country, America, during this time period. Moving on to the Vietnam era, you will see a slightly significant rise of minorities in the military. In an article called Racial, Ethnic, and Religious Minorities in the Vietnam War, a resource guide, it says approximately 300,000 African Americans served in the Vietnam War. In 1965, African Americans filled 31% of ground combat battalions in Vietnam, while the percentage of African Americans as a minority in the general population was 12%. In 1965, African Americans suffered 24% of the U.S. Army fatal casualties. African Americans saw combat at a higher percentage and suffered casualties at a higher rate. While also stating that 35,000 Asian Americans served, 80,000 Hispanics served, and 42,000 Native Americans served, showing a great increase of what was in the military beforehand and those who have come before them during that time. Lastly, we begin into the present day. As the graph shows that I have handed out, there was an even bigger jump in numbers as our country started to grow and be more open to people of color, giving us more opportunities and making us more willing to join and serve. In an article by Pew Research Center, it shows graphs and states how the United States military has become significantly more diverse since the early 1990s, with people of color comprising roughly 43% of active duty personnel by 2020, up from roughly 25%, which was in 1990. While the total percentage of minorities has grown and driven largely by an increase of Hispanic and Asian service members, the percentage of black service members has remained relatively stable over the past 2 decades, which also goes with my graph that I have given y'all. As we end today's topic, I just generally want to show the growth and acceptance the United States military has overcome, going from a predominantly white military to being literally almost half and half of white people and people of color, showing our unity, our strength, and our urging, which is what makes our country unique and special.